Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Cathedra webinar live on July 17th, 2025. If it's your first time attending one of our webinars, Cathedra means learning in Creek. And today you will be learning about Federal Grants 201, how to feel confident as you click submit from the amazing Diane Leonard. My name is Brianna Birch, and I am the Training and Development Coordinator here at the Native Learning Center. We're so honored that you can join us today. Please follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that can be applicable. Also displayed here is our copyright infringement law. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar presentation materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. So just a reminder there. And before we get started, I just want to go ahead and familiarize you all with the learning platform and where things can be found. I need to put the link here. Give me one moment. And I'll also add my shared notes. Just give me a sec while I find those. So in my shared notes, I did share some links with you. Let me know if you can see them. And you can go ahead and review those shared notes as well. Any resource items for download are also available within the online course when you go through the course's pages. Each time you are ready to join one of our webinars moving forward as well, you're just going to go ahead and log into the website and click on the large green banner that will be across the top of the screen, like in this picture. And when you first join the webinar, it's going to prompt you to complete an audio test before joining. Please select the listen only option so that we can avoid any feedback during the webinar. And also, if you need to change the speaker that your sound is playing from, you can select the phone icon down at the bottom of your screen. This will bring up a list of your speaker and mic devices so that you can choose your preferred audio output. We're so happy that you're here, and we also do encourage you to participate in today's webinar. And we're also going to go ahead and primarily rely on the public chat. In the left-hand gray menu panel, you can open the public chat and the shared notes. If you click on the public chat, you will see a chat open within between all webinar attendees, the NLC facilitator, as well as your webinar instructor. Simply click in the box that says send message to public chat, type the message that you want to send, and hit enter, or click on the blue paper airplane icon to send your message in. Please also send your comments and any questions that you have into the chat, and feel free to use the raise hand feature in the bottom right hand corner of the screen if you think we have missed something along the way. Also, any tech support issues can also be submitted here as well, and I will do my best to support you and try and help you navigate through it. If you click on the shared notes section, you will find some helpful links, like a link to join our weekly email newsletter, as well as a link to the location for our Cathedra webinars archive on our YouTube channel. You can also find a link for today's webinar feedback survey. Please, we do encourage you to go ahead and complete it and let us know how we're doing. Also, a link to connect with us on LinkedIn, and a link to bookmark for easy login to the Cathedra constant learning in the future. At this time, we really love to get to know you and would be honored if you all will let us know your name, where you're joining us from, your tribal affiliation. If you have one, you may also be a tribal employee, as well as your work or role in Indian country that may have led you to today's webinar. Also, one quick final note. Try to not avoid clicking on the red menu panel all the way to the left of your screen. If you click on the red menu panel, it is going to take you out of the webinar. So just reminding you all of that. If you do accidentally click it, however, you can just rejoin again by clicking the green banner at the top of the screen. With that being said, it's my great pleasure to introduce today's webinar instructor, Diane Leonard. Diane, I'm now going to go ahead and hand the presentation off to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brianna. And hello, everyone. I am so thrilled to be with you today. Every time that my name shows up on your Native Learning Center calendar, you know we're going to be talking about one main topic, all things grants, right? All things grants. And today, we're going to be looking specifically at federal grants and trying to think about what it means to feel confident as you click submit. That could mean something a little bit different for each of us. So I can see that a few of you have been typing into the public chat where it is that you're joining us from today, and I'm so grateful for that. I have a second follow-up request for that public chat. On a scale of 1 to 10, when you think about how confident you may feel, I'm generalizing, if you were going to go click submit on a federal grant, 1, not confident. 10, all the confidence. I feel so confident, but I'm always looking for more tips and tricks. Could you let me know, how do you feel as you think about clicking submit on a federal grant right now? I get there could be nuances from one application to the next, but if you could give me a generalized number of your overall confidence with clicking submit on federal grants, I'd really appreciate it. That would give me a sense of who's here with us today and where are we starting from. On the screen, that is my bio slide, the formal stuff, and the total number awarded includes a lot of federal awards. And in fact, because I turned my slides into Brooke a little bit earlier before I had a short summer vacation, the number's gone up. Yay! Because it was related to some federal dollars. So super excited that it's now 137 million, I think, 0.4 and change, if I remember correctly when I did that math today. But super excited to share with you some of the different things that our team finds can help reduce the stress for whatever the federal grant is that you are considering. And I see we've got a wide range of comfort and confidence in the room. Some of you have never submitted a grant or have never submitted a federal grant. So yep, lots of room to grow in terms of confidence. For others, it looks like perhaps you've submitted multiple and so have gained some confidence. I want to be super clear. Everybody's starting in their own spot in their own grant journey today. For those of you just getting started, we're kind of in an intermediate topic today because it's not talking about how to find that federal grant, how to submit that very first one. These topics will apply and these tricks and tactics will apply to anything. But I do want to remind you that all of our previous grant webinars are also a resource for you. And so if you have any questions on how to get to them, how to access those recordings that have been made available over the last, my goodness, almost 2 years that we've been working with the Native Learning Center, please be sure to reach out to Brianna, whether it's in the chat or via email afterwards if you're having any issues accessing those other grant recordings. So today, in order to reduce your stress, increase your confidence as it relates to federal grants, we're going to talk about a few specific design ideas. We're going to talk about logic models. We're going to talk about smart objectives. We're going to think about how we use those program design elements and those descriptive words that we might be putting together for our objectives. How are we going to help create the strongest application? At the end, I will double check the public chat verbally call on you to ask any outstanding questions that we have not covered yet today. But I really encourage you to please ask questions in the public chat as we go. Is there something you want me to dig deeper into on a slide? Is there something I alluded to that you want more clarification on? My goodness, if I use any industry jargon or any acronyms, please ask for clarification. I try not to, but sometimes it happens. But that public chat is open to you the entire session, and I am closely watching it so that I could answer your questions as we go. So we have a sense of your current confidence level as it relates to clicking submit. But I want to be candid about some of the things that can be stressful as it relates to federal grants. When we think about how we strengthen your overall applications, how do we make you more confident? How do we make you more competitive as you or your authorized organization representative click submit in grants.gov? Things are changing. Things have changed. Things are, well, frankly, always changing as it relates to federal grants. I've been in the grant game for so long, I remember what a big deal it was when grants.gov released the subscribe to an opportunity button in grants.gov. I remember when grants.gov was not an online portal and we had to not apply online, but we had to mail binders in by like FedEx or UPS or DHL, right? Things are always changing. That's my point in sharing a few of those little snippets. Things are always changing as it relates to federal grants. But there are a few recent changes that I'm going to highlight today that if you're not careful, could make you feel less confident, not more confident. So I want to think about everything that I can give you as a tactic and a tip today to help you feel more confident. And Brianna has put the link to the slides in your public chat as well as a resource. I'm going to put a few other links in here today. As I was preparing, I thought, there's a few blog posts that are not directly linked in our slides that I think might be helpful. So there's a few extra things that I'm going to put in the public chat today as well. So what is changing? Well, like I said, things are always changing with federal grants. The reason that today's content is so important is that there has been a significant shift in the amount of time that is being given from the time a grant opportunity opens in grants.gov until the time it is due. Could you let me know in the public chat why for yes and for no, how many of you receive the daily email that's listing what has gone into grants.gov in the last 24 hours. It's a free email that you can subscribe to. You can make it so that you only receive certain departments or certain agencies. There's some flexibility on how you do it, but I get a daily list of everything that got added. Okay, I see that some of you already get it. Many of you are not yet receiving that email. When you go to grants.gov, when you're in the search grants feature, go ahead, make sure that you have a personal individual account. It is free. It is not the one you're applying through, but go ahead and set that up for yourself so that you can get the grants.gov free emails directly to your inbox. Only read the ones that are relevant to your work. If you're not trying to save sea turtles, you don't have to read those links. Don't click on it. Don't open it. Only look at the things that are relevant to your work. The reason I wanted to highlight that free email that can come right into your inbox is because what we're seeing as a trend is that on average, from the time it opens until the time it closes, we're seeing 2 to 3 week application periods. That is incredibly tight. That is shorter than what the average has been in recent years. In recent years, we would have been talking about more like 30 to 60 days. Consolidating the process to 2 to 3 weeks makes it harder, frankly, for any organization to feel confident as they click submit, unless they're doing some preparation work themselves in advance. So I have another follow-up question for you. How many of you know what pre-planning is as it relates to grants? The idea of doing pre-planning work before a big opportunity opens, getting any sort of head start. Does anyone know what that is? Do you engage in it? Y for yes, M for maybe, N for no. Go ahead and let me know in the public chat if that is something that you are comfortable with, familiar with, engaged with, and there's no judgment as I ask for things like this. I just am trying to get a sense of kind of where folks are so that I can tailor some of the links I might share or the comments I might make. Okay, so a few maybes or sort ofs. I see some folks candidly saying no. At least one of you said yes. So the idea behind pre-planning for large grants is you want to think about who you might apply to, which funding program, which department, which agency, in advance of it actually opening, in advance of it accepting applications. This is the equivalent of, well, if you were in a running race. My daughter does cross country for her high school team. If the team is all lined up at the beginning of the race and the official says, you get to start 5 minutes early, and you get to start 5 minutes early, and you get to start 5 minutes early, those three runners, in theory, they have a competitive advantage. It's not a guarantee that they will win, but it is a competitive advantage. Pre-planning for grant applications is the same idea. If you are aware of an opportunity that may open, maybe you've read about it on grants.gov, maybe you saw another tribal organization recently announce an award, those are things that would make you say, when might it open again? How might I apply? And so what I'd encourage you to do is to think about what those opportunities are and what you might do in advance. We want to think about how we can get a slight competitive advantage, knowing that the trend is that we're only going to have 2 to 3 weeks in order to put our application together. Remember how I talked about those recorded grant writing webinars through the Native Learning Center? I have talked about pre-planning more than once. So I'd encourage you to go back and look at those recordings so that you can get my deeper dive into what is pre-planning. What does that mean for our organization? Don't worry, you don't need to have watched that in order to understand the rest of today's session, but I wanted to point you towards a few extra resources since I know that some of you are thinking about grants for the first time. What I want to talk about is a logic model and how having a logic model is going to make your federal grant application stronger, how it's going to make you feel more confident as you go to click submit. A logic model, it is a visual way that you can present your program or your project or your organization to a funder so that they can understand at a very high level. I'm going to say like a 10,000 foot overview level. They can understand what is it that you need in order to deliver the program, in order to deliver the services. What are the things you're going to do? What are the changes that you will bring about as a result of the work? And ultimately, what is the impact that you will be creating in your community? A logic model is not required in all federal applications, but can be a required or an optional attachment. Having one is a great idea, whether it is required or optional, because what it makes is your writing work faster. I won't say easy, I will say a little easier. On the screen for you right now, what I have are the 7 key elements that our team uses when designing a logic model. I'm going to show you a very basic template in a few minutes, and we're going to walk through them. Here's what I would like to have you do alongside me today. I'd like for you to open up a blank document or get out a piece of paper or pad of sticky notes, that's fine too, but I want you jotting down these different elements and putting in information that's specific to your program or project you want federal funding for, so that you actually could walk away today with some basic draft information for a logic model. But before we do that, let's do a check-in on comfort level with logic models. I know in terms of your confidence with submitting federal grants, I know how many of you rated yourself. But I don't want to assume that that tells me about your confidence as it relates to a logic model. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, I'm learning about logic models for the first time today. 10, I love logic models. Don't worry, I'm not asking you to unmute and have to come live and talk with me about it, but 10, love all things logic models. If you could, let me know in the chat your comfort level or your knowledge as it relates to logic models. Again, no judgment ever when you answer any of my questions in the public chat, but that helps me to get a sense of who's in the room and how are we feeling. So the logic model on the screen, I don't know if it looks like a road to you, but it does to me. That was the idea behind it when we designed this slide. If we start at the very beginning of this windy road, we don't know anything if we're reading as a grant maker for the first time about your work, about your program, about your services. And so you're going to help us build our understanding as we read through your logic model, learning about what do you need? Those are our resources. What do we need in terms of people, in terms of equipment, in terms of supplies? We need those things so that we can do the good work. We can conduct our key activities so that we can count how many people or how many community members or how many hot meals were delivered, and then start to think about the change we're creating, whether we're talking about short-term, intermediate, or long-term outcomes. Those 3 elements on the screen are all about what changes in behavior, knowledge, or skill are happening as a result of your work. And ultimately, how do we get to the big impact that you're trying to accomplish on behalf of your community? So we're going to build a logic model together. Again, I'd encourage you to type it out on a blank new document that you've opened on your computer, or to jot down some ideas in a notebook or on some sticky notes. Our logic model, it does not have to look fancy. Different grant-making agencies and departments at the federal level will have different templates that they may require you to use. Others will simply say, please upload as part of your application your logic model. If that's the case, if they don't give you a template, you can use this super basic one. It's in our logic model guidebook. I think that should be one of the handouts that is already uploaded into the system for your class today. If not, let me know. It's available for free on my website. I can help make sure that you get the link. But this template is designed to be incredibly basic on purpose. It's a place to put the information. It's going to help give that logical flow from left to right for the reviewer as they read it. Certainly, you could change the font, you could change the column size, you could minimize the margins, all that. Yep, all good. But this basic idea of putting information in for these 7 columns, that's what we want to see happen for you. We want to have that laid out so that it's visible to the grant maker. What is it that you're trying to do? What's that impact you're trying to create? This helps them to see, and again, at a high level, about 10,000 foot overview, how are you going to get from where you are now to this impact you're promising us? So I'm going to walk through. I gave a very quick, on my roadmap journey, I gave you a very quick overview of those 7 items. I'm going to give you a stronger definition for each. I'm going to give you then some examples that you might consider while I'm giving you the examples, or while I'm describing it on the screen. Please go ahead and make notes about what it looks like for your project or your program that you're thinking about applying for funding. Oh, but before we do that, you know what would be really helpful? If I understood what sort of work you're thinking about applying for federal funding for, and what type of work it is that you're using as your filter, your narrowed view for today for this exercise. So go ahead and let me know in the public chat if you don't mind. What is it that you're going to build your logic model for? What is it you are hoping to apply for federal funding for? Is it senior services? Is it infrastructure? Is it maybe a new trail for recreation in the community? I don't know. I've just made up a few things on the fly. What could it be? No right or wrong answer, but that way I understand the type of work that you are focused on and what you are hoping to apply for federal funding for. So as you're doing that, our first section in the logic model that you should now be jotting notes down in this portion about, whether it's housing programs like Taryn just said, or building an elder program, looking for a multi-purpose pathway for e-bikes, right? All very unique, distinct things. So you're all going to have a very different list of resources. Some agencies or departments at the federal level might call them inputs. They mean the same thing. These are the things, the resources, would be the people, so the human resources needed in order to do the work. It could be community volunteers, it could be tribal organization leaders, it could be tribal organization staff, it could be interns. Who do you need? What do you need in order to do the planned work? And I'm guessing that your lists of resources are going to be very different depending on the types of work that you've just typed into the public chat. By doing this, laying out maybe the example I'm going to carry through for you, we're going to build a program that's focused on improving the health of community members. And so if I'm thinking about, well, what might that look like? And I'm coming together, I'm trying to get ready to apply for a health-focused grant application. I think I found a federal opportunity, maybe even two that might open soon. And I'm trying to make sure I know what is it I want to apply for. Well, what would I need? Well, I'd need the money in order to pay for it. It's okay to talk about the money in your logic model. If you don't have it, how are you going to pay for the program? So it's a good resource. Financial, we need to think about it. If I'm thinking about health, am I talking about actually offering fitness programs? In my case, I'm going to say yes. So I want to make sure I have the facility for where we will offer classes, for where we would have fitness equipment. You need to have a place to put the spinning bike, or to put the yoga mats, or to put the treadmills, whatever it is that you want to have for your fitness equipment. We need to have a space for it. I need to have some staff or some volunteers maybe, but I'm going to need to have people who can help maintain the facility, who can help teach the classes, who could help teach people how to use the equipment properly. I don't need to know all the details yet about how I'm going to use all those things and how many hours I'm going to be open and how many of the classes and on which days. I don't need to have my schedule set yet. I'm thinking about, what do I need to have? I'll worry about all that stuff in a minute, but what do I need to have? If you don't mind, in the public chat, let me type this in here. What are you thinking you might need for resources? Anything that comes to mind for you for what you need for resources. By doing this, what you're doing from the very beginning is building a very high-level structure for your budget. What is it going to cost for your project or program that you want to propose to the federal government? So by having those resources laid out at the very beginning, you might come back and add some more as you walk through your process. But by having those outlined, you can quickly start to move in parallel paths towards submitting a federal grant. You want to feel confident as you click submit, right? That's the topic title for today, feeling confident as you click submit for a federal grant. You don't want to only write narrative and then save the budget for the end. You won't feel confident as you click submit because there was a part that felt rushed at the end about the budget. You want to have both your application narratives and your budget and budget justification moving forward at a parallel path. So by starting with your logic model, before you sit down to write a single full sentence of narrative, by starting with your logic model, you now, in that very first column, started to think about budget and can start saying, here's what we want to do. Here's the stuff that's going to cost us money. So I see some of you said staff, some said equipment, some said facilities. Oh, Carson, I love how detailed that list got so fast. EV farming equipment, a power bank, farm staff, seeds, stilts, actuators, and possibly an AI program tailored to the location. I love it. Such good detail. And you know what? The fact that you put possibly, you're not sure, but you're going to think about it. Play it out as a team as you work through the application. It's something you think you might want. Now is the time to put it in your document. This is a draft. You're not committing to all this. Make sure that you're putting all the elements, both the things you're sure of and the things you feel somewhat confident, really think might happen, really want to have happen. Put all those resources in here now so that you're building a budget that is as complete and holistic as possible about all the things you might spend money on. Great. Okay, thanks everybody that shared their answers. Once we have our resources, we can move to the right. We can move to the activities section. So if you're typing along or if you're jotting this down on paper, you might put up another heading and you might say activities. Now you're thinking about, with all those resources, the people, the financial resources, the space, Carson's case, all that farming equipment that we have. Now that we have those things, what are we going to do with them? So your activities, these are the strategies, the actual implementation things that you're going to do in order to achieve your big impact. So they should be specific actions. I'm going to stick with Carson's for a moment because it's at the bottom of the chat for me. And so, okay, if you're paying for seeds, I'm guessing that you're planting the seeds. Guessing. I'm good at houseplants, but that's about it. But so, okay, what's going to happen with the seeds? And then you're probably caring for the plants during the growing season. Are we talking about harvesting then? So it might be activities that span 6 months. It might be activities that span 9 months. It might be activities that span 12 months. But jot down all the things you can think of that are related to your project. It could be formal events. It could be formal classes. It could be related to the development of a tool or the planning for a capital housing project. It could be around the process, the doing of the work. But ultimately, you're going to be thinking about these activities. If we do these, whatever combination of these you have, if we do these activities, they will help lead us towards our desired impact. Not just one by itself, but collectively, these activities will help lead us towards our impact. So in my example, thinking about improving health for the community, that idea that there would be some fitness classes offered, some fitness equipment available. Well, all of a sudden, in addition to having those physical things available, now the funder would understand that it's not just exercise classes that's going to help improve the community's health, but also the offering of nutrition classes and the offering of stress reduction technique activities and courses. Now, there's probably a whole lot more that I could list here. The exercise classes, I mentioned spin bikes, so there'd be some spinning classes. I mentioned yoga equipment under resources, so there'd be some yoga classes, maybe both traditional flow and chair yoga. So we've got a wide range of things that will happen. I can jot down different ideas. It's not going to be a full calendar of what's going to happen over the year. This document is not that big, but real quick, high-level notes about what are the key activities that would take place. Can you guess what I'm going to ask you to type in the public chat? That's right, activities. So I just put that in as a delineator in the public chat. If you could, what are some of the activities that you're thinking about related to your project or program? No right or wrong answer. Quick word, phrase, even just one of the many that you're thinking of. What are the activities that, as a part of this, if you do these things, we think we will achieve our impact? That's our goal. Our plan is to get over here to this impact on the far right-hand side. So go ahead, take a moment, please, and type in at least one of the activities that you've thought about related to your specific work. Staff training. I love it. If you don't train your staff on a particular evidence-based program or the model you want to implement, how would it be successful? So it's fair to think that you're probably going to want to train the staff around that. And that is an important process activity. Without it, how would the grant maker know that you're going to spend the appropriate amount of time training staff to get the work done? Great. Purchasing land. Yes, if acquisition is necessary before you can do any of the other work, yes, let's show that key activity. It needs to happen. Makes sense that as a resource, we'd have the money for the acquisition. So now we're starting to see how these will work together. All right, getting building estimates, doing a survey. Love it. Great. Offering an after-school farming club. Having a school composting program. Great. I don't need to necessarily know or have the space for, well, how many times is the after school farming club going to meet? You might know that information. It might not all fit in the logic model, but I'm starting to get a sense of as a grant maker of how we're going from what resources are you going to have? How are you going to put those resources to use in your activities? Continuing on our journey from left to right, we now get to outputs. The outputs are the things that will be produced or be created as a result of the activities. It could be that you're counting people. You're counting the number of kids in the after-school farming club. It could be the number of seeds that got planted. It could be the number of acres that were purchased. It could be the number of staff that were trained. It could be the number of hot meals that were delivered. Things that are quantifiable, things that you can report to the grant maker. In my example, trying to improve the nutrition of community members, it could be the number of participants who are registered in the program, the number of classes. And I could have made it the number of exercise classes, the number of nutrition classes, the number of stress reduction technique classes, all things that can be counted. Counting of the things is meaningful. It does not point to and confirm that we achieved the impact that we want, but it helps the grant maker, it helps the federal agency, the department, the staff that are reading it to understand what is the scale of what you're proposing to do. So, outputs. What are the outputs that you're jotting down on your paper or typing into your document? Go ahead, under the word outputs that I've just put in the public chat, let me know what are the things or the people that you would count in your project or program. I gave some examples based on things I'm making up based on what you're saying in the public chat. So I might not be right on, might be a little bit far afield, but just trying to carry your specific things in the chat forward. So go ahead and you tell me the real ones. What is it that you will count? What will your outputs be? By building your logic model, you might say, Diane, I don't know all these answers. I'm going to need my colleagues to help me build this logic model. Good. I love it. That should be the case, especially when we come to federal grant applications. This should not be a single person show. This should be a team effort. It will be a team effort to implement successfully once funded. It should be a team effort to design, write, and submit. You need to make sure that your colleagues, you need to make sure that your leaders, you need to make sure that the folks in finance, that everyone agrees. Yes, this is what we could commit to. This is what we could do for this amount of money. We can achieve this work together. So let's see, we could count, let's see, how often a building will be used. We could count what type of activities it would be used for. We could count how much water is saved. We could count in terms of crop yield. We could count in terms of solar kilowatts that are generated. Great. Okay. People also. All those are like, oh, those are really cool outputs. Don't forget how many community members are benefiting. How many community members are benefiting from your work? That's always a great output to think about as well. We're going to keep moving towards the right, which brings us to our outcome section. When we think about outcomes, we're going to look at 3 specific periods of time. And actually, should I say specific? No, I should say broad, flexible. Our outcomes should be the anticipated changes. Often what that means is something about awareness, skill, knowledge, behavior. The 3 categories we're going to look at: short-term, intermediate, long-term. When you're looking at a federal grant, sometimes you're looking at a 12-month grant. So the outcomes that you're going to propose should be complete within the 12 months. Other times you might be looking at a federal grant and it's a 3-year grant program. Looked at some that are 4, looked at some that are 5. So the flexibility in short-term, intermediate, and long-term should be relative to your grant award period that you're applying to. So in the short term, for your specific work, what sort of changes in behavior or awareness or skill might you expect? I'm not going to make you type into the chat short, intermediate, and long-term. That's an awful lot of quick segmenting of outcomes by time. But I want to highlight that when you look at the opportunity that you're going to apply to, I want you to look at the award period. From the start date till the close date, how long is it? And define for yourselves as a team. Therefore, are we talking about the first 6 months for short-term outcomes? Are we talking about the first year for short-term outcomes? Is it year 2 through 3 that's intermediate? Is it year 4 that's long-term? Each grant application could have a slightly nuanced answer. So define and agree for yourself as a team what period of time you're talking about within these different breakdowns of outcomes. The reason we don't want to smush them all together and put them just as one column is because it's often the progression of participation in a program that will generate different outcomes. So you want to show some segmentation over time if you're expecting that you're going to be doing this type of work for a while, and you want to be able to show that over time, over participation in a program, over your work implementing this work, what sort of different outcomes you will see. So we're going to think about outcomes at a higher level. Like I said, I'm not going to ask you to type in short, intermediate, and long-term too much. But I do want you to think about outcomes in general. Don't worry about that connection to the time period. But what are you thinking will happen? What will you be able to measure and report? As a result of this program focused on increasing the health of community members, I want us to be able to report that community members participating have an increase in knowledge about nutrition choices when dining out. That got really specific, didn't it? You might say, Diane, I don't know exactly what about nutrition I want to have them know. I just know I want to improve their knowledge around nutrition. Great. See how that's a pretty generic outcome in the moment on your screen? That's fine. You might say, all right, what else? So intermediate, if I'm playing through my example here, then I'm going to have you type in a minute. You might say, all right, that healthy impact idea that you've got, trying to improve the overall health of community members. Maybe after folks have been in the program and going to exercise classes, maybe the exercise coach is there as one of the resources that's available to help them. Maybe they can at some point, maybe like 6-9 months into the program, maybe they're going to say they are better at doing the actual motion of these different exercises. Okay, so we could say it's an increase in skill at specific exercise activities, maybe about, you could say, well, I'm not sure which ones, or you could say, it's going to be about yoga, or it's going to be about strength training. You could decide. Increase in adherence. Oh, maybe that's about an increase in adherence to a particular nutrition plan, or increase in adherence to an exercise plan. I could keep it really broad to get started and then let team members weigh in. Or I might be super specific. I might have an idea of exactly what I mean by increase in adherence. If I know, let's just put it down now. If I'm not sure, I want to phone a colleague, ask some questions, and get more information. You might continue to talk about outcomes as a team and say, but well, within our 3-year grant period, within our 5-year grant period, what really do we think might happen? Well, if someone stays in the program with us for an extended period of time, I bet that either they could self-report or we could measure and report an increase in participant strength. They are stronger because of their participation. I might say, if somebody stays in our program for 12 plus months, I believe that we will be able to show an increase in their flexibility or an increase in their endurance. You might say, but how are you going to measure that? Well, self-reporting is certainly an option, but maybe you're thinking about flexibility, that the exercise coach is going to conduct a flexibility pre-test, before we start the program, and a post-program participation flexibility test. Maybe they're going to do an endurance test for the speed with which they can walk a mile. So ask yourself for all of your outcomes, whether short-term, intermediate, or long-term, as indicated by what? How will you know that this outcome has been achieved? You don't have to write all that in your logic model. But the reason you want to ask yourself the as indicated by what question now is because you're going to have to write about it in your application. And so getting the answer now while you build your logic model makes your writing process smoother. And you guessed it, increases your confidence when you go to submit, because you know, not only did you tell them your outcomes, you told them how you're going to measure it. You are increasing their confidence in your ability to measure the things you said you think you can achieve. Many well-intentioned organizations will tell them what they believe they can achieve, but never tell the federal staff, agency, or department, how are we going to measure that? What tools do we have? What mechanisms are in place? How will we be able to measure and report back to you that we have done exactly what we proposed? All right, so you have been so patient and hopefully typing out or writing out some ideas for your outcomes. I just put outcomes in the public chat. If you could be so kind, please let me know at least one of the outcomes that you've listed. One of the common things that comes about when we are looking at our different grant applications and we're thinking about the different words that are used by grant makers, when we're thinking about how it is that we can read these incredibly long guidelines. Like, right, what are we talking for how long they might be? Sure, it might be 75 pages, 107 pages. There's plenty, right? So one of the things that happens is that there is a lot of jargon that can be found in our work. Unfortunately, that is the case. And outcomes is one of many O words used in our field. What I don't know is if you know what other O words might be sometimes confused for folks when they're working on their grant applications. So when we think about outcomes, sometimes folks will start to get confused because you can already see one of the other O words on your screen, outputs. Outputs are what we can count at the time of the activity taking place. Outcomes are changes in skill, behavior, knowledge, etc., a little bit after. So as the activity is being completed and after. The third O word, how fun is that, is objectives. So I want to share with you a blog post that our team wrote around the difference between objectives and outcomes, because those are the two that, as we talk about outcomes, like we just did, objectives usually comes up trying to understand how do they all fit together. So I wanted to make sure that you had that blog post as an extra resource for yourself. So what are we seeing for some of the outcomes that you have been jotting down? Let's see. So equitable food access, decreased carbon, decreased water usage, increased nonprofit organizations. Hear how there's ups and downs in terms of the way that outcomes are being phrased. There is some sort of change. And that aligns with what you could see on the screen as I was showing you the different types of outcomes as I was building in my example. What is the actual number of increase or decrease? You don't have to know right now. You can get there later. Don't get caught up in trying to agree on increase by what percent, decrease by what percent, reduce social isolation. I want to know as indicated by what. I want you thinking about how you're going to measure it, but what the actual key performance indicator for that measurement will be is not, in this moment, your primary concern. So don't put that pressure on yourself. You know what you want to measure in service of being able to prove, to say to that agency, to say to that federal department, we did it. We achieved our impact. So your ultimate intended change within the grant award period, whether it was 12 months, 36 months, 72 months, doesn't matter. Over the time that you had for the grant award period, yes, this is what we intend to achieve. Your outcomes that you're putting in your logic model, you're going to follow those during your funded grant award period, report on them and show, look, we're achieving our impact. So what ultimately is the impact that my logic model has been driving towards this whole time for this improved health idea? Improved community health has been the impact I was designing for the entire time. This is the point where folks will usually say, wait, shouldn't I fill out impact first? If you want to, you absolutely can. I like to walk you through it from left to right so that you understand the flow of the information once it's being finalized and it's being read by a grant maker for the first time. But when you're building your logic model, put in what you know. It might be that the impact, we are designing this program so that we can improve community member health. Put that in the column now. If you know where are we headed and what we're trying to figure out is how to document the way we will get there, don't wait. Put it in there now. So your impact, what is it? I've just typed impact into the public chat. If you could be so kind as to type in the words, the phrase that describes your desired impact. What is it that you're trying to create? What is it you're trying to have happen? Quick word, phrase, no judgment on wordsmithing. But go ahead and let us know what ultimately is the impact that you're trying to achieve. Your impact, it's, well, related to your theory of change. Some of you might be familiar with what a theory of change is. A theory of change is the highest level description. It might even sound like a sound bite. I'm not saying it has to be a big, big, long document. Sometimes they are. But it's a quick soundbite idea of if we do these things, we will get this result. Your logic model is giving more detail to that really high-level idea. Because you're saying, if we do these activities by using these resources, ultimately, we're going to be able to measure our changes in our outcomes, and we're going to get to this amazing impact. We're going to get to this amazing change. We're going to get to self-sustainability for an organization. We're going to get to improved housing conditions for elderly and multi-generational residents. We're going to get to a place where we have mitigated food and power deserts. Those are all amazing impacts. Thank you, everybody, for typing them in. So that is the big thing that you are striving towards with the activities you're proposing. Now imagine having this all filled out. Well, the good news is you're really close because you've drafted a lot of this already today. And again, it does not need to have all sorts of detail. You might not have all the information but jot down anything and everything you know. Having that logic model roughly drafted so that you and your colleagues agree this is what we want to do to achieve this impact. What that allows you to do is to be prepared if you're offered the opportunity for a head start in that running race. If you find a federal opportunity that you think is of interest, you can say, okay, something just came into my inbox this morning because it was released yesterday at 5 p.m. by this government agency, and I want to know if it is the right fit to help fund our program that will improve housing conditions for elderly and multi-generational residents. And then I could look at it and quick say, do the activities I have proposed that our colleagues have agreed to that we want to do, would it fund these? No? Okay, put it down. Oh, but look, there's one more tomorrow. Okay, would this one, would this help with funding the activities that would get us to that desired impact for improved housing conditions for elderly and multi-generational residents? It might. I'm simplifying. The odds that you go from one day to the next and find the perfect thing, oh, that'd be great. But by having your logic model, what it's doing is you're using it now as a filter as you look at every federal opportunity that at the very first read, the first glance feels like it could be a fit. I want you to say, does it support our ideal logic model? Don't change who you are and what you want to do drastically in order to go after federal funding. That is a sustainability stressed nightmare. Don't do that, please. Think about what you want to do, what you know is best in your community, and use that high-level logic model as a guide to say, does this federal opportunity support that or not? And if not, put it down. There will be something else. I promise. There's, yes, lots of changes always happening with federal funding, but there will be something else. Don't chase the funding, especially when you only have, like I said, on average right now, we're seeing 2 to 3 weeks with a lot of deadlines. That is stressful because it's going to take you about 100 hours to put this federal application together. So you want to do as much preparation as you can to know who are we and what do we want to do. That way, when the right thing opens, you might make small tweaks in order to address their required activities or to think about the way they want you to do evaluation and reporting. But the base of who you are stays the same. So if you have a logic model ready to go, oh, well, that's great because now we have outcomes. And I just showed you in that blog post that I put in the chat, that link, that shows you the difference and gives a nice quick reference for what's the difference between outcomes and our next section, objectives. Your logic model is setting the stage for what does this look like? 10,000 foot overview, what does this look like? Now my objectives are going to help me understand, or help me describe, I should say, so my reviewers understand, what is this really going to look like? When we go to implement these activities, what's really happening? So we're giving more specific information related to each of our key activities. SMART objectives, not a natural way of writing for most grant folks. There are a few folks that I'm like, honestly, I think from the time you learned to write, you have known how to write SMART objective style. But for the most of us, it took a lot of practice. So if you want to let me know in the public chat, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, I'm learning how to write SMART objectives for the first time today. 10, I love writing SMART objectives. Go ahead and let me know your comfort level with them. Full transparency, it took me years before I would self-assess at even a 7 for SMART objectives. Years of practicing. Years. And even still, my favorite way to write SMART objectives is with a team. And I'd say team writing, how's that work? By having multiple perspectives, different people in an organization with different types of expertise, maybe a different role in the organization, I find that that produces the greatest level of specifics to draw from to write a great SMART objective. So please also, I share that so you don't feel pressured to write the perfect SMART objective all by yourself. I think that's often an unrealistic expectation. I will, however, say, as we think about what we write as a goal statement or what we write as a SMART objective, it can be a place where within all the AI conversation that is happening, there are some really great ethical uses of AI that could be considered. Treat it as an assistant. Given the SMART framework, how might you improve my draft SMART objective? And see what it says. I've had some folks have some real success. If you say, I don't have anybody to help me edit, I don't have anybody to help me write my SMART objectives, take what you've drafted and use it as a source of feedback. Do the same thing with your goal statement. Here is my goal statement. Knowing that a goal should be broad, should be intangible, a little abstract. What suggestions would you make to improve it? You could do that as well. Again, if you don't have someone within the organization available to you as an editor, it could be a way that you might choose to utilize AI to support your application. But I just told you what I would type into ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot if I was choosing to use AI as a way to get some feedback on the goal. I want it to be a big, broad, overarching principle. In fact, if I went back to my logic model, probably is going to sound an awful lot like what I'm thinking about for impact. It's not clear how I am going to create this community that is healthier than it was when we started. How are we going to get from point A to point B? I don't know. I just know that our goal is to improve the health of our community members. It's broad, it's abstract. My logic model outlines my activities, the things that we're going to do with the money in order to get to our outcomes, the changes in behavior, skill, knowledge, the things we can look at after. What the objectives are showing us are how will we achieve the goals. They're going to be really precise. They're very concrete. So your objectives, when they are written in SMART format, they're going to help the reviewer to see how do these activities in that logic model, how do they move us forward? How do they move us towards these awesome desired outcomes? How do they move us towards the point where we'll be able to count our outputs? Remember, lots of O words. Outputs, we see it in our logic model. They're the things that we can count, the people that we can count, the meals that we can count. Our outcomes, they're what we're looking at and reporting afterwards. These are the things that we achieved. They're your, how well did this go? We need to talk about our objectives for our outputs and outcomes to make sense. So even though we drafted outputs and outcomes in the logic model document before we wrote our SMART objectives, you already have an idea about your SMART objectives because you wrote out your key activities. What does that mean? It means that we're going to write SMART objective statements that are giving additional specificity to the key activities we put in our logic model. We are, in our SMART objectives, ensuring that within our objective statement that it is clear how we would measure this particular action. Within our SMART objective, now I'm skipping to the end of my acronym, the yellow column on the far right-hand side, we are being clear. When is this happening? By the end of the fourth quarter, by the end of year 2, by November of 2025, something that is specific about the date or the time frame. In SMART objectives, you might say, Diane, you skipped the A and the R. Why? So when we think about what is achievable, this is about what is achievable with the budget that you have and the timeline that you have. So is it possible? Is it possible to accomplish this with the money you have, however many hundreds of thousands or millions you're asking for the federal government? Is it possible? And is it possible within the 12 months or the 36 months or the 72 months that you have available? It's hard to judge the achievable without seeing the rest of the application. So that's why I talk about the A in SMART a little bit towards the end of the discussion. The relevance, the R, the relevant in SMART, how does the goal that you have put forward, your big, broad, intangible, abstract goal, how is it related to this SMART objective? Or maybe you want to think about the objective and say, I'm looking up and I'm looking at that goal and I'm like, how does this goal umbrella statement, am I sure that I fit under here? The answer should be that it does. It makes sense. It makes sense that this particular objective is going to be part of how we reach this big, broad, intangible goal statement. Our SMART objective, it's become, well, I had to say mandatory. It is an expectation that applications are presented with SMART objectives, because grant-making agencies and departments, as they have such high levels of competition, those who are managing the funds are responsible to their stakeholders, to their leaders, for the impact that's being created with the dollars they're managing. So while it used to, way back when I started in grants, it might be that something could get funded that it felt nice. It seemed nice. It sounds really nice to say we're going to provide good. Maybe you're going to say, I'm going to provide great services to all community members, to all clients. Feels good. Sounds nice. But come reporting time, what is the funder going to hear? What do they think is going to be the proof that you did this? Big question mark. So what would this instead be for more the SMART style? Increase client satisfaction, service satisfaction to 90% this fiscal year. The key performance indicators that are being measured and that will be reported are incredibly transparent now to the grant maker. What can they expect you to measure and what can they expect you to report on? It certainly is not a guarantee that you are going to achieve this level of satisfaction, but they know what you think as you start. They know what you think is possible. Let's make it a little more fun if you'd like to. This cutie on the screen says, I will vanquish evil in a single afternoon. I think that's a fantastic idea. It makes me feel real good. Like, yes, let's do that. Absolutely. I have some questions though. I don't know exactly what that means. I do know that you're talking about just a single afternoon, but I've got a lot of questions. I don't have a lot of specifics. We all have our own definition of what that might mean to vanquish evil. But I do really think that, right, his outfit is adorable. What is a smarter style? Still adorable, super excited youngster. And this time saying, I will increase the distance from the ground by 1 meter before dinner tonight. So still have a very time-specific thing. Both of these youngsters have big plans for their afternoon. But this time, I know that it's about increasing the distance from the ground by 1 meter. I don't know how. There's going to be other objectives that will tell me how I would actually get off the ground. On the other one, maybe there'd be more information that would tell me what it means to vanquish evil. But go ahead and let me know in the public chat. I'll put in a delineator here. I'm going to put dollar signs. Which of those would you fund? If you only got to give the resources to one equally adorable youngsters, I will vanquish evil. Or option 2, I will increase the distance from the ground by 1 meter. Which one do you think you are more confident in? Which one would you give the grant money to? So number 1, vanquish evil. Number 2, in the public chat, increase the distance from the ground by 1 meter. Let me know in the public chat which you think if you were the grant maker and had to decide, which would you say yes to? which would you fund? I know my heartstrings want to say yes to both, but we can't. We can only fund one. Sometimes folks will say, Diane, it's very obvious which one we should fund, right? You showed us number 1 so that we know the old style. You showed us number 2 so we know the smart style. But try to make it so that your heartstrings are being tugged on a little bit, because that's what happens to grant makers as well. Like, these are really great programs. We want to support them, but they don't have enough money to go around. So SMART objectives help give the clarity to grant makers so they don't have unanswered questions. What did that other youngster mean by vanquish evil? We know exactly what this youngster is trying to do. By eliminating unanswered questions, we're increasing our score in federal applications, because we're not leaving our reviewers going, I'm not real sure. Right? When they go to score us in the rubric, they will have the answers they need to address, to complete the rubric, to judge your work. So a SMART objective. Here's the SMART acronym on the right-hand side, another quick slide as a reference. Specific, measurable. Sometimes agencies and departments will say attainable instead of achievable. Same thing. Sometimes agencies and departments will say relevant instead of realistic. Same thing. Time-bound, time-limited, timely, all the same thing. What the SMART objective does, over the course of all of your SMART objectives, you might have 3 to 5. Maybe you'll have 6. Maybe you'll have 2. I'd say often you have 3 to 5. But in your SMART objectives, you're giving your grant makers, you're giving those staff or the peer reviewers for the federal agencies and departments, you're giving them the answers to your journalistic questions on the screen. Who's going to do this? Who's going to be delivering the training? Who's going to be receiving the training? Where is the training taking place? When is it taking place? How is it being delivered? What is that training? You just kept saying training. What is the training? So we're getting our basic journalistic questions answered. Why? Why is that relevant part? Why? It's related to us achieving that big, broad umbrella goal. I have given you a specific slide for each SMART with a few little extra tips. And some of this, I love it because it comes from a great resource that the CDC put out a number of years ago. And still, some of these tips, they are some of our favorites, and our team has added to some of these as well. One of my favorite tips is right here, line number 2 on this slide. Only use one action verb. If you write an objective statement when you're drafting, and then you step away from it and you come back to edit for yourself, give it another read before you share it with a colleague, I want you to read your objective statements, and I want you to underline or circle or highlight your verbs. And if in a single objective statement, before you, right, within, from capitalization to period, if you find more than one action verb, I would ask you to please considering split it into 2. So if you have more than one action verb in an objective statement when you are drafting, and you do my go find it, underline it, highlight it, circle it, please consider splitting it into 2. It makes it much easier for your reviewer to understand, are all the elements there for that one SMART objective versus what may have been a slightly smushed objective. With measurable, it is not enough to put a number or to put a percent sign into a SMART objective and say, it's measurable. You want to think about my outcome prompt as indicated by what? When you were writing your outcomes in your logic model, what were you learning about how it would be measured? It's not that it fit in your logic model, but it might be the answer to the measurable component of your SMART objective now. How will you measure increases in knowledge? How will you measure increases in flexibility? How will you measure improved housing conditions? How will you measure an elimination in pollution? Those prompts related to your outcomes in your logic model need to be present in your SMART objectives. What is achievable? What is attainable? Here's how I'd like you to think about this for a moment. If someone said that they would eliminate childhood hunger in a community of any shape or size, it could be a tiny town like where I'm from in far, far upstate New York in the Thousand Islands. It could be a really big city. Insert large city in the United States here. How many zeros do we think it would take to achieve eliminating childhood hunger in that community? Even in teeny tiny little towns, it's zero. Lots of zeros, lots and lots and lots of zeros, because you said eliminate, not reduce, eliminate. Oh, wow, that's some big system change. Like that is going to cost a lot. Only we had someone that could just write a big blank check full of lots and lots of zeros so that important work could be done. But if you're asking the grant maker for $100,000, they're going to say, I don't think you can eliminate childhood hunger in this community for $100,000. Like, I mean, I'm really excited to learn about why you're doing this, but like, there's something about this that doesn't seem attainable. I think that your project to timeline relationship to the work you want to achieve, to the impact, isn't quite right. But remember, the A has to make sense. That's saying your objective has to make sense with your timeline and with your budget. The scale of both need to align with what you're saying you can achieve. The R, that's our realistic, that's our relevant component. Does the objective make sense and support your big, broad, intangible goal statement? And T, timely. One of the writers on our team, Beth, one of her tips when she's teaching a basic grant writing course and she's teaching folks to write SMART objectives for the first time, she said, get the easy win while you're drafting, not where it has to end in the statement. You might rearrange it, but get the easy win right away. What's the time period? By the end of the first year, by the end of September, by the end of the third year. Put in the time, just put it at the beginning phrase. Now you have put yourself in the right frame of mind for what period of time am I talking about, and draft from there to think about your specifics and your measurable components. Beth will say, take the easy win. Start it with your time component. Rearrange the sentence once you've got all your elements there. But that way you know you're checking one right off the box as you start your SMART objectives. So I'd like to have you find some elements. When you look at the screen, what do we see for SMART elements? What do we see that might be related to our specific, our measurable, our achievable, relevant, or time-bound elements? Do you see any that are there? If you do, let me know in the public chat. We're on a little bit of sort of like find a word, only we're looking for SMART objectives. Sort of like that children's highlights magazine. They used to say, find the hidden objects. It's sort of like that. Do you see anything that's specific? Let me know in the chat box. Or if you want to call out the M, or maybe, did anybody find the T? What do you see here? Yeah, speedy on the looking for the hidden objects. Time bound. Right, Carson, by the end of the school year. Specific. We've got those district health educators. We've also got, for specific, our youth participants. When we think about what's measurable, 90% of youth participants. Now, you might say, Diane, but I don't know how many youth participants you have, so I don't really know what 90% means. Does it mean 9 kids? Does it mean 90 kids? Does it mean 900 kids? Don't know. You're right, you don't. So I think a lovely little trick is to put n equals in parentheses next to percentage. N being like, what is our base unit that we're working from for this particular statement? So n equals 1,000 students. Now we would know that 90% would be 900 of our 1,000 students. You might say, no, it's 100 students. Okay, then I mean 90 students is 90%. But putting your n value in your objective statement is a great way to answer questions before a reviewer even has a chance to worry about it. What's achievable? Well, you can't see the project timeline. You can't see the project budget. So it's really hard for you to read an objective statement and definitively say, oh yeah, that's achievable. You need the context of the rest of the application. The same is true for realistic. You need the context from the rest of the application to know the goal statement to judge, did the A and the R get met for our SMART objective? And that's intermediate learning. It takes folks usually a little bit of practice with it to go, wait, I can't just judge my statement on its own. I need the rest of the application to confirm I really have a SMART objective. The time bound, Carson called it right out, by the end of the school year. This example was just like what Beth suggested. Take the easy early win. Tell us when it's going to happen. Now let me show you a different example. This time, I'm showing you the goal. Don't worry about wordsmithing. I'm just showing you some quick stuff here so that you can get a sense of how you can revise and strengthen your own SMART objectives. So if you have a goal, now you can think about your objective. I've got my umbrella on the screen. Isn't that great? It's the same from the last slide to this. Got my goal on the screen. It's my umbrella. How does this objective relate to my goal? Is the R, is the realistic, is the relevant component there? We can see that we're talking about family caregivers as the goal. We can see that we're talking about family caregivers in the objective below. At a quick glance, without reading the rest of the application, you're like, I feel like they're related. I'm going to need the context of the rest of my application, but I feel like they could be related. But is everything there? Does anyone see the T, the time element? Does anyone have questions about the specifics? I know I do. I want to know, where are these caregivers coming from? I want to know, so when's it happening? And are we talking about like the whole country, a specific city, a specific county? How many people are we talking about? Because there was no n value for me there to even get a sense of scale. And even in this, I call it a smarter objective. For reference, the first one was funded. The second one gives a whole lot more clarity and is more likely to get funded. But still, I'm like, I love it when it tells me the n value, so I don't have to think about how many people are we really talking about. Pro tip, if you do put an n value in your objectives, double check the numbers you're putting in your logic model for outputs so that they are the same and don't create confusion. One last quick example. Teachers will be trained on the selected scientifically based health education curriculum. What do we think? Is there anything missing? SMART. Go ahead and type into the public chat for me. If you were the reviewer, if you were the staff for the federal agency or department who's having to read and score this, they're not scoring you on like, is it smart or not? They're scoring you on, do they have confidence it will achieve the program goal, their funding purpose? But what's missing for you? Go ahead and let me know in the public chat. SMART, what might be missing? Joy has shared, Joy's added. And before I flipped the screen too. Time bound, not there. Measurable, nope. And why aren't those there? Because there are not enough specifics. So you could almost always, if you feel like there's something missing, something with the M's missing, something with the T's missing, it usually means there aren't enough or there aren't the right specifics for a reviewer to have no unanswered questions. So what might be smarter? Take the easy win, put that time frame right up front. By year 2 of the project, LEA staff will have trained 75% of health education teachers in the school district on the selected scientifically based health education curriculum. I know, I sound like a broken record today, don't I? What would still make it even better? If I knew how many teachers are we talking about? Are we talking about 75% out of 4? 75% out of 44? I don't know. I'd be guessing. And so maybe there's some information in your logic model that would help me connect the dots. Other spoiler alert, your reviewers don't have time to connect the dots. That's a fun like car activity in like different, brain puzzle books, but it is not what you want your reviewers doing or feeling like when they're reading your federal grant applications. They're huge documents. They've got to read them fast. They have to score them rather quickly. Don't make them try to connect the dots on their own. If you've got a number in your logic model for your outputs, how can you fit it into your objective statements? Now you're pre-connecting the dots for your reviewers. It's super clear to them what the picture is. So what I want you to think about is, what are your SMART objectives for the programs or projects that you wrote in the chat earlier? It will not always be that you can write them in advance. But when you're drafting your logic model, it might just flow that you could sit down and draft some of your general SMART objectives that you would want, regardless of what the funding program is that you're looking for. So you could potentially write your SMART objectives before the program opens, before the deadline clock starts ticking. On the screen is one of my favorite documents to have if I'm facilitating with a group about how to write SMART objectives. Use these prompts. Have people do pre-work. Hey, I want you to answer. What exactly are we going to do? How will we know that these changes occurred? Are there any timeline constraints we should be aware of? Oh, don't use summer because school's not in session then, or right? Ask some of these questions in advance or use them live in a group, whether digitally or whether we're in a Zoom room or whether we're physically all together in a conference room. Use these to get out as many details, specifics, if you will, so that you can include them in your SMART objectives. Just because you're the one writing the federal grant or leading the federal grant application process doesn't mean that you need to have all the answers to these questions. That's why I said my favorite way to draft SMART objective statements for a federal grant is with lots of perspectives from our organization in the room. So practice. Practice in advance. Ask for feedback before the 2-week deadline clock is ticking, because it feels like time speeds up once that federal grant gets announced. The shorter the timeline, the harder it is to feel confident as you click submit. So ask yourself, what can we get done in advance? I'd also encourage you, when you're thinking about your applications, how can we take what we just drafted in our logic model, in our SMART objectives? How can we take those details and answer specific questions in the guidelines from them? You now have a blueprint. You have, I was going to say a treasure map, but that's not it. A treasure map isn't always clear. No, you have a blueprint. Look at these questions. I can write answers based on my logic model. Here's a different set of questions we might see in federal guidelines. What are the key activities we'll perform? I know that, it's in my logic model. What are my inputs? Oh, you mean what are my resources? I can answer that. All of a sudden, I can draft some responses. What were the results you had last year? Oh, well, that's not in my logic model because that's about last year. Oh, but you know what? What I learned last year should make sense with what I'm proposing for this next year. So I should look at what I've said I've achieved, and I should think about what I'm proposing in my outcomes so that I'm not confusing the reviewers and accomplishing totally different things or totally changing my numbers for what I could achieve. So your past performance will again influence what you write using your logic model as your blueprint. All of these answers that I just quickly put up on the screen, the reason I did it is so that you can look back and reference them. They are all green, and they are all green because they contain elements that are helpful for reviewers to understand. Your logic model, your SMART objectives, your narrative needs to be consistent. The way that you feel confident when you click submit on a federal application is by knowing that your design documents are consistent across logic model, narrative responses, SMART objectives, budget justification. They all come from the same core design idea. And you started it when you built your logic model today and you were in that resource column. What do we need to get funded? And we made sure it was in our budget. And if we added something to the resource column because we built out more objectives, great, go put that in the budget too. That was the beginning of you having a consistent story so that you know you can click submit. And it'll never not be stressful. I'm sorry, I can't promise that. But that is what makes it so that you have confidence as you click submit. From the very first idea you had until you clicked submit, you are consistent across all of your elements. Now, I could talk about federal grants all day, and I know we don't have that kind of time because it's the bottom of the hour. You have places you need to be. You've been amazing in the public chat participating today. I don't think I missed any questions that came up, but this is the time. Please type questions in. I see we've got one already. Let me type those, or let me read what's being typed, and also feel free to keep coming in with more questions. Carson asked, how advisable is it to apply for grants that are on the outskirts of your intended impact? For instance, our program is primarily a clean energy food equity program, but may include educational outreach opportunities. Is applying for educational outreach grants a good idea or a waste of time? Fantastic question. I would say that sometimes it's not about you being the lead applicant. Sometimes it's about looking at partners. So if it feels like it might be a little bit far afield for you, there's part of it that's relevant, but not really, you might not be the most competitive. What would happen if you applied with someone who was more directly aligned and you were a sub-grantee? Sometimes that's the best answer. Let's see. When dealing with sciences or clean energy, there's a lot of talking points that are built off of previous knowledge not everyone has. When submitting federal grants, should one assume that a reviewer will have knowledge within the department, or should one explain in layman's terms? There's a middle ground. Like NIH, NSF, you gotta be technical. You don't want layman's terms. You're going to assume, yes, they have a level of technical expertise. Something like, an example, I'll say maybe Office of Violence Against Women, you might have, because they call out like who's reviewing. It's not always those who are experts in counseling services or those in survivor services, but there's folks who are survivors who are serving as reviewers. So being aware of who your review audience is what I would say is most important in making that determination. Now, one question that I just thought of that may come up, some of the words I'm even seeing here are words that there's some, again, questions and changes about what can be funded and what might not be funded. So I do want to encourage you to be very careful about understanding what the current guidelines, and this is true all the time in federal grants, always has been, always will be very careful to understand what the guidelines will allow. Do not put anything in that the guidelines will not allow, or they will reject you. They won't read it, they will reject you. So please be very careful to understand what are the specific guidelines, follow them to the letter, and that way, again, when you click submit, you can feel confident. You can all email me as many questions as you have as you look at your first or your next federal grant. Like I said, I could talk about this all day. We had 90 minutes. So my email is on the screen and in the slides. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all. I also am always happy to answer if like social media, LinkedIn DM, if that feels easier, also totally fine. But thank you everybody for joining us. Brianna, I'm going to send it back to you and I'll keep an eye on the chat in case we get any more questions.
Thank you so much, Diane. Thank you very much for your time and your effort with this presentation. I definitely learned a lot. And as we close out this webinar, of course, please feel free to submit any of your questions to Diane and she'll be happy to answer them. Also, please take a moment to complete our survey regarding today's webinar. I'm actually going to go ahead and add that link to the chat. And I've just put it in the chat for you all. It only takes a minute or so to complete the survey, and your feedback really helps us to do more of what is working well and to improve on the areas that we need to improve on. So we do invite you to be as candid as you like. And just a reminder that the survey is totally and completely anonymous. And we hope that you can join us for our next webinar. The next one is NAHASDA Tribal Council Roles and Responsibilities, Day 1, and that'll be with Cheryl Causey. We do encourage you to sign up for our email list so that you can always be aware of the exciting webinars and trainings hosted by the Native Learning Center. Feel free to access this and any other recorded webinars at our Cathedra Webinars archive, now posted to our YouTube channel. You can also feel free to view them and share them with your colleagues and friends as well. And also, please be sure to check out our upcoming events posted to our various social medias. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and as well as LinkedIn. We also have an in-house produced podcast titled the Hopathinga Native American Podcast, where we discuss more focused topics within the Native American housing and self-determination. You can also listen to us on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. And you can also view the video recordings with our guests on YouTube. Once again, thank you all for your participation and for joining us today. We hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we hope to connect with you real soon. I'm going to go ahead and leave this up. That way you guys can also grab any of the links that you may need in this shared notes. And once again, Diane, thank you so much for today.